Well, next in this show, let's get outside the perimeter here. The ER in Eriksdale was closed more than it was open last year. The province has announced plans to hire more healthcare workers and build a new emergency room in Eriksdale in the coming years. But as you've been hearing in the news, staffing at the existing one at the EM Crow Hospital has been a big part of the challenge. It's one of the main reasons that it is so often closed. Last month, the CBC's Bryce Hoye was up in Eriksdale as part of the CBC's Communities in Focus. He was the Community Pop-Up Bureau in the West Interlake in the overall area. And he's in studio this morning to talk about how people in Eriksdale are coping with the local hospital's spotty emergency room access. Good morning.
Morning, Mars.
So how spotty are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we got numbers through a Freedom of Information request that suggests that EM Crow Hospital experienced about 63 disruptions or closures to its ER last year. Now, what that translates to is the equivalent of more than 300 days of closure. So, like you were saying, closed more than it was open last year. Now, that same data suggests that Lakeshore Hospital in Ashern, about 40 kilometers to the north, had about 128 disruptions for the equivalent of about 91 days worth of closures. So, not as bad as in Eriksdale, but that's about a quarter of the year of closure. So we're getting to see a bit of the picture in the interlake there. Now, people won't be shocked to hear who are listening right now that a big part of what's behind this is staffing challenges. We hear about this kind of all over the place, right? And tomorrow on the show, we're actually going to hear more on that from our colleague Josh Crabb about just how widespread these rural and northern ER closures and disruptions really are in Manitoba.
So for today, let's stick with the ER in Eriksdale. What are people saying about how those closures around that area affect them, in Eriksdale? How concerned are they?
Yeah, well, I spoke with a bunch of people while I was there for that week, and I got the distinct impression that it's eroded people's trust in the ER in their backyard. Now, Dale Lloyd worked at EM Crow Hospital for about 35 years as a medical records clerk. Her heart actually stopped on the job 15 years ago. Lucky it happened there, right? She got saved, or the nurses saved her life. They shipped her to Winnipeg. She received care there for about a month, and then she was off on her way. Now, she still has a heart condition, but she's grateful to be alive. She says the staff there, super skilled, but she's lost confidence in the ER in recent times due to all of these closures.
I've told my partner if Eriksdale's not on call and I have a heart attack, you head south, and if you make it to Stonewall and I survive, great, but my chances are better. That's a half-hour, 45-minute drive north, and Stonewall's at least an hour south. So depending on what's wrong with you, you might not stand a chance.
So Lloyd says she thinks people in her community are going to die because the services just aren't there.
So when you look in that area, where are people in Eriksdale going when their ER is closed?
Right. So I alluded to Ashern's Lakeshore Hospital a moment ago, right? I spoke with folks in Ashern and Eriksdale. There was a theme, and it went kind of like this. People said they or a family member or a friend needed emergency care, but Eriksdale's ER was closed, so they had to head to Ashern 40 kilometers north. Or they were going to go to Ashern, but turns out it was closed that day as well, so both closed. So folks go to Stonewall or Selkirk or Gimli, an hour or more away, and you can already see how that might create extra tension to an already tense situation. So I spoke with Keith Lundell. He's a longtime local healthcare advocate in Eriksdale. Now, he shared a few stories with me. One was about a nurse. She actually used to work at EM Crow Hospital. Now, he says a few years ago, she needed emergency care for herself.
They got loaded up and said, oh, no, we can't take you to Ashern. They're closed. On the way to Stonewall, they got probably, I think, 20 miles down the road. Stonewall says, no, we're closed now. It wasn't hallway medicine, it was highway medicine. And nobody deserves that.
So now the NDP has promised to build a new ER in Eriksdale. They actually campaigned on that promise. The Premier was saying, actually to you a couple of weeks ago, the target is to have shovels in the ground within 2 years, same as with the plans for the Vic here in Winnipeg. But Lundale said, what's the point in building a state-of-the-art emergency department if you don't have staff to keep it open 24/7?
How are the shortages that you've been referring to, how are they impacting the workers that are there?
They are impacting the workers big time from what I can tell. I spoke with Dr. Jade Young. She's born and raised in Eriksdale. She's a Métis physician who spends some of her time working in Garden Hill First Nation, but most of the time she's in Eriksdale's clinic. This is across the street from E.M. Crow Hospital in Eriksdale, and then she's at the hospital itself and in the ER. Now, she's been there for 3 years, and she says just in that time, there's been a drastic decline in access to emergency care. Just to illustrate this for you, she says there used to be 4 lab technologists. Now there's only 1. And you can't run an emergency department without a lab technologist. They do x-rays, blood work, everything. She also says the hospital is supposed to have 3 staff physicians. Now, a few years ago, it had 2.5, the equivalent of 2.5. Now it's down to 1.5. And Dr. Young says workers are getting burned out.
I do my best to transfer people out who are not going to be sorted in a timely fashion, because I'm a human being that has been, working for typically 30 hours in a row with only like 2 to 3 hours of sleep. The short staff in other sectors, not just physicians, it's contributed to a lot of burnout in physicians in the smaller rural community hospitals in the interlake.
So the Interlake Eastern Regional Health Authority says they're actively recruiting more workers, including physicians. They've got 6 international medical grads on the way to the region this summer, and 2 have already accepted jobs in Ashern.
It's your turn now, Bryce, to answer the $1 million question.
Okay.
You ready? Apart from plans for the new ER, what else is the NDP government going to do to address staffing issues? Like, where are they going to find the workers?
They have their work cut out for them. The NDP earmarked $300 million or so in the budget this year for recruiting and retaining workers. They're going to be restoring a physician recruitment fund. They've pledged to hire 1,000 healthcare workers, including 100 physicians. Health Minister Uzoma Asagwara told me that the government's focused on trying to offer more training within communities. The goal is to then end up with more people like Dr. Young, who have roots somewhere and they're more likely to stay or return to their communities. But in the meantime, there's still this urgent need to boost healthcare access in Eriksdale, emergency rooms included, because it's an aging community. And Donna Kingsley, I spoke with her, she's 75, and she said that she's called Eriksdale home for around 4 decades, the area. And she doesn't want to leave, but she's questioning whether she should move to Winnipeg just to be closer to more emergency care options.
What do? Do I stay in the community or do I move closer to Winnipeg? And the emergency care in Winnipeg is already overburdened. And the other thing is, how can we encourage people to come and live in our community if they don't have healthcare system?
So she told me that she actually wrote the health minister and health authority. She said that in that letter, she outlined a number of concerns, including some of the ones we just heard about aging in Eriksdale.
What about the quality of care, Bryce, that they're getting there, like when they can get into the ER?
Yeah, I heard all sorts of nice things from folks in Eriksdale about that. The feeling I got was that there's this deep appreciation in the community for the workers that are at E.M. Crow Hospital. Even Dale Lloyd, who we heard from earlier, she said similar things. She's 67 now. She has some of the same concerns as Donna Kingsley. She has loved ones who have had strokes, cancer. Some have heart issues. She has a heart condition. She says she knows from so many years working there at the hospital that it can provide life-saving emergency care, just like it did 15 years ago for her, but it just needs more support.
I've seen lives saved, like lives that you didn't think were going to be saved. And it's urgent to get something happening back in our hospital. 2 days in 2 weeks doesn't cut it.
So there are some upgrades coming to the Ashern facility, Lakeshore, soon that could help improve emergency access care in the region. Dale, who we just heard from, and others say that the new ER on the horizon in Eriksdale holds promise, but in the interim, they're looking to the region and the province to focus on hiring more people to improve access to care.
All right, Bryce, thank you very much.
Thanks, Marcy.
Special report from Bryce Hoye, who's a reporter here at CBC Manitoba, but spent some time working for Communities in Focus up in the Eriksdale, Ashern area. If you want to read more on his story, go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, and you can watch the television version as well, of course, tonight on our 6 o'clock news.